Cover letter and resume skills course. In this session, you will learn the definitions and differences of a cover letter and a resume, how to review a job posting for these requirements, what information to include, and how to format your cover letter and your resume, which include showcasing your skills, attributes, and interest, along with choosing the most appropriate categories, whether it's bulleted or paragraph style, and how to use action verbs. You'll also learn how to highlight your transferable skills, how cultures differ in their standards across the board, and last but not least, additional considerations such as including links. Well, let's jump into what is the definition and differences. A cover letter is one-page business persuasive letter submitted along with your resume to describe to the employer why you're a great candidate for the role. This serves as an introduction to your resume. You want it to be specific to each job and demonstrate your interest in that particular employer or that position. It should include information from the resume, but shouldn't repeat items. It is often the first form of contact with that prospective employer. It should be concise, well-written, and demonstrate effective communication. We'll get into more detail later on in this presentation regarding the cover letter, but that's the overall on the cover letter. Now, what's a resume? A resume is a formal summary of your professional qualifications, including your professional experience, skills, education background, training, and notable accomplishments. A resume highlights qualifications for the employer, including several of those items, such as education, experience, skills, and relevant information. A resume is used by employers to determine potential interview candidates for that specific opportunity. You want to tailor your resume or make it specific to that career opportunity or that company. This is a chance for you to tell your story. Now, those sound very similar. So what are the differences between a cover letter and resume? Well, the three most important differences and the more common differences are content, purpose, and the format. For the content, a resume is a broad overview of your education and your career history. It can list most or all of your relevant skills and professional experiences that apply to your current job search. While a cover letter is more focused specifically on the job you're applying to. While some information might appear on both documents, a cover letter usually focuses more on the present and future objectives, as well as the resume represents previous jobs and accomplishments. The purpose is a little bit different for both of them as well. Your resume should convey a wide range of information in 1 or 2 pages. Employers use resumes to review these skills quickly and gauge if you are qualified for the job, while a cover letter allows you to create a comprehensive view of yourself as an individual and an applicant. And lastly, the format is different. Cover letters is a professional communication structure, typically in full paragraphs, while a resume, you'll have sections with bullet points that convey specific details like dates of employment and job duties. So the style is a little bit different. So those 3 areas are the main differences between a cover letter and resume. Now let's get into, well, what do I put on those? You want to review the job posting to find what requirements and key items the company is looking for. You want to ask yourself, what are they asking? What is this company asking for in a qualified candidate? Well, there's typically two areas that they are looking for, in addition to several others, but they're typically looking for the required qualifications. These required qualifications can be experience, skills, education. You want to make sure that you note and you are meeting these required qualifications and list the skills that you have to meet these required qualifications, whether it is for computer technology, meeting the required qualifications of using Google software or Adobe software. You want to make sure that you are noting these required qualifications, that you can meet them. In addition, they also look for desired qualifications. These are, if you have these qualifications, you definitely want to highlight them. You may not have all of them, but highlighting them strengthens your resume or your cover letter and really shows the employer what are they looking for. Some postings might ask for additional information that is required to be considered, such as the cover letter must be included. Not all job postings require it, but it is becoming more and more common that cover letters are required when you're applying for the job. So you want to make sure that you're meeting those required qualifications or desired. And lastly, one of the items the job posting may also add is additional information outside of both the resume and cover letter, such as examples of licenses, certifications, additional documents, transcripts. And it might even include references. So an example of a license could be a CDL, commercial driver's license, or they're often for technology positions, IT certifications. So you want to make sure that you are meeting all of those requirements, and for both the required and highlighting desired if you have them, in addition to including any copies of certificates to make you one of the best standing candidates for this position. Now let's move on to the resume. On this screen, you will see several different styles or types of resumes. They all look a little bit different. And we'll go into why that is, but this is just a quick overview on how resumes can look different. So let's discuss, how do you format your resume? Formatting a resume. Well, one study found the average HR professional reviewing a resume spent 6 seconds scanning the resume. It's a very short period of time. So you want to make sure the formatting of your resume meets that specific job, or you know what you're looking for. Sometimes it might be a little bit longer. It just depends on the review time. But let's get into, how do we format a resume? Well, you want to consider whether it's bulleted versus paragraph. Bullets are typically easier to read to pick out key items from the job posting. You also want to consider the chronological work history order, also the chronological order of the overall resume. If you are listing dates from current to older, which is recommended on a resume, you want to make sure you're doing that consistently with your education, with your trainings that you've taken, everything in there. You want to make sure it meets that chronological order. You also want to make sure it's easy to read and it's specific to this position. Again, you don't want to have a resume that is broad and overview. You want to give yourself the best shot of giving that job. So making sure that the font is consistent and specific to that type of job. You want the font to be simple and professional. Some basic fonts that are used are Times New Roman, Arial, or something similar. Avoid using the fancy and decorative fonts. And typically it's between a 10 to a 12-point size for easy reading. In general, you should use the same font and size that you use in your cover letter. and vice versa in this resume. You want to make sure there's no more than typically 2 styles, one for the heading and maybe one for the additional text underneath the headings. Again, making it custom to this specific position, but making it easy to read and professional and simple. Many employers use applicant tracking systems, software that allows automated sorting of job applicants based on key specific words, skills, job titles, or other fields. If you are using a complicated font, sometimes it's hard for this software to read that letter, which might prevent you from moving forward. So keeping it simple and professional will give you the best chance. In addition, you want to make sure that you have good spacing. It's essential. You don't want the text to be too dense that it discourages time-pressed readers, the job applicant or the company, from reviewing it further. You want to make sure it's easy to read. Single spacing with additional space between each section is recommended, often using 1-inch margins all around your page, and making sure to keep the sections aligned. And so that way you don't have different bullets in different areas. You want to make sure that you're looking at the page and it's easy to read through quickly. You also want to consider underlining and bolding. Underlining is typically saved for web links. Bolding and different font size is used to emphasize an item, but you want to be consistent with that bolding and that underlining. If you are going to bold a heading or a company name, you want to make sure you're bolding them all on your resume. Don't want some bolded and some not. Again, for the easy, quick read and professional look. The bold and larger text sizes are usually easier for them to find the sections. So with the bolding of the sections, you're able to glance at that heading and say, I want to look for education, and they can find their education quickly and go over the details to see if you meet those requirements. Again, they are looking for those requirements, but they want it to be in a structured format. You also want to keep in mind the styles and layouts will vary on the specific job and industry you're applying for. Find the style that works best for you and that job position. As you saw in the previous slide, there were several different styles and layouts. Some for a graphic designer might look different than an electrician. You want to keep those styles in mind and find what works best for you and what showcases yourself. This is your resume. You want to make sure that you are meeting those qualifications. Most, if not all of these sections will also be repeated on our formatting of a cover letter later on in this class, but these are some of the key formatting sections for a resume. So now let's look into, well, now that we know how to format it, what's included in a resume? Gathering and grouping information. Some of these are the major sections of a resume. You'll see that there's some further detail on the side, but typically you have a header, which this includes your personal information. You have a summary, you have skills, you list your work experience or professional experience. You sometimes include your education or your continued education and professional development. These are recommended standard headings, also referred to as sections. The format and order can be different. They depend on the type of job you are applying for. And we'll discuss further into the next few slides as we go into each of these sections and what is included. But there's also possible other sections or headings. Use the job posting as a guide. You want to see if there's related skills, computer skills, maybe there's volunteer work or honors